From NJPBS Studios, this is NJ Spotlight News with Brianna Venozzi.
Hello and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Joanna Gagis in for Brianna Venozzi. A few stories we'll get into later in the broadcast. More trouble for NJ Transit. We talk with the agency's CEO about the latest. And two bills aimed at protecting immigrant rights may be up again for a vote. We'll break down what they are. And later, Republican State Senator Holly Schepisi shares her take on affordability and recent ICE activity in New Jersey. But first, a few of today's top headlines. An incident during an ICE operation in Roxbury Tuesday led to an officer firing his gun. Now, a DHS spokesperson said ICE agents were conducting a targeted enforcement to arrest Jesus Lopez Banegas, who is in the country illegally and has a criminal record that includes drug trafficking charges, drug possession, and driving under the influence. In 2021, a judge issued an order for him to be removed. In a statement, DHS said, quote, in an attempt to evade arrest, Lopez Banegas rammed into a law enforcement vehicle and weaponized his vehicle in an attempt to run an officer over. And referring to the officer's actions, said, quote, following his training, the officer defensively used his firearm and shot out the tires of the vehicle to stop the threat. They told us no one was injured and Lopez Banegas was taken into custody. Now, video of the incident was circulating online this morning, captured by a bystander. As per state law, the incident is now being investigated by the Attorney General's office, and Acting Attorney General Jen Davenport stood with Governor Sherrill this afternoon to announce the opening of the new portal where residents can upload photos and videos of any ICE encounters they witness. The site is nj.gov/know your rights, where you can file a report and learn more about immigration law.
We know these agents aren't sharing their plans or their identities. They don't even bother to check if they're arresting American citizens by mistake. This portal will help us to hold them accountable, to track their actions, collect that information, and use it to spot patterns that can inform our response as a state, including in court.
Meanwhile, Hudson County Executive Craig Guy is forming a group that'll create county-wide policies and protocols for all municipalities in Hudson to guide how local law enforcement communicates with federal immigration officers. He issued an executive order on Tuesday establishing the group that he calls the Safe Communities Committee. Some cities in Hudson County already have established what they call safe community policies, what Republicans often refer to as sanctuary cities. During a House Judiciary Committee today, Republican Congressman Jeff Van Drew, who represents South Jersey, blamed sanctuary cities for the rise in violence during ICE encounters.
When the local enforcement is forced by the politicians, not their fault, not to do their job and not cooperate, why does it create the situations that we see where we have the need for crowd control? By the way, they're not peaceful. Those are not peaceful protesters. We know what a peaceful protester is. When you spit on law enforcement, when you push them, when you hit them, when you beat their car.
Well, coming off of one of the biggest gambling days of the year, the Super Bowl, some people are still getting texts and alerts to their phones encouraging them to place bets. In some cases, those push notifications encourage bettors to replenish their accounts. Well, Democratic State Senator Andrew Zwicker introduced a bill earlier this week to ban those types of alerts, saying they contribute to gambling addiction, a problem that's worsened in New Jersey since the onset of legalized online gaming. Under Zwicker's bill, companies would be fined a minimum of $500 per offense, meaning each push notification that's sent out to a phone. If the bill moves forward, it would apply to all casino licensees and any online gaming companies affiliated with them, as well as any sports betting licensees and their contracted operators. But the bill still has a long way to go before it becomes law. Coming up, we talk with the head of NJ Transit about this week's service delays and some of the bigger challenges facing the transportation industry here in New Jersey. That's next.
Major funding for NJ Spotlight News is provided in part by NJM Insurance Group, serving the insurance needs of residents and businesses for more than 100 years.
If you were one of the lucky ones, you missed the hours-long delays on NJ Transit trains this week, but thousands weren't so lucky as overhead wires crashed onto their trains during Monday's morning commute. And while NJ Transit officials deal with that, commuters into New York are facing more service cuts starting this weekend and continuing into mid-March. That's because Amtrak is shifting its operations from the old Portal North Bridge to the new one, meaning service will be cut in half for about a month. So while riders brace for the pain, we have here in the studio with us President and and CEO of NJ Transit, Chris Calori. Chris, so great to have you with us.
Nice to be with you.
Let's start with those wires on Monday. You did issue a public apology to all those who were affected. What happened? Why?
Look, it was very unfortunate. It was a rough start to the week for our commuters, and I thought it was important to not only apologize, but to explain what happened. One wire falling down on a train you could handle, but two back-to-back was what led to frankly, a catastrophic situation that led to cancellation of service on the Northeast Corridor. We talked to Amtrak. We worked with them very closely to make sure they make the repairs. And to their credit, they got the repairs done. I took the train back in the evening. It was not pretty, but we got people to where they need to be. There's a broader issue here, which is we have said this over and over again. When you have 100-year-old infrastructure and then you have on top of that sub-zero temperatures, you have these kinds of situations.
Yeah, these are the things we hear a lot about in the heat, right? Extreme heat. We've been dealing with extreme cold. Let me ask you this. What has Amtrak already addressed? Because we've lived through a few summers of hell. We're in the cold. I don't want to say the cold of hell, but what have they fixed? What still needs to be done before we do get to the summer?
A lot more needs to be done, but one of the reasons why we did not have a summer of hell last year is because Amtrak made a lot of improvements the year before and the spring of 2025. They need to continue doing this. Ultimately, though, we need a total rehabilitation of the catenary systems, signal systems. That takes money, that takes time, but what we have impressed on Amtrak is, in the meantime, you have to make the repairs because our customers, unfortunately, rely on Amtrak's infrastructure to get from point A to point B. That's what my priority is, and I know that's what the governor's priority is.
The governor decided to keep you on. Is this a good thing for you? You're keeping this job?
It is. Look, I'm honored. The governor asked me to stay,
Yes.
And on top of that, give me the honor, the opportunity to run Turnpike. It all makes good sense.
Well, yeah, why does it make sense for you to be the head of both the Turnpike Authority and NJ Transit?
I think the governor has it right. She thinks about this from a transportation perspective and less from what agency does what. Our job is to make sure we get commuters from their home to their work and work from home safely and efficiently. So it doesn't matter whether one runs a Turnpike or one runs a transit. It's about what these agencies do together for the benefit of New Jerseyans. And she saw it fit to ask me to think about how to better align our interests for the benefit of the residents, and I'm honored that she would do that.
Do you have an idea yet of how you can kind of multitask through these two roles, but also maybe create more cohesion?
Yeah, look, I've been doing this now since Monday, and it has been fun. I'm not sure how much I've slept, but that's okay. That is part of the challenge and the opportunity. There are ways we can align our interests. Park and rides is something I'm exploring. The idea of building park and rides right at interchanges so we can then run bus service from there to Secaucus there to New York would be a really interesting way to reduce the crowding on the trains and at the same time use the capacity that exists on the Turnpike. So that's just one example of how I think we can integrate and align these agencies for the benefit of the riders and commuters of New Jersey.
A lot of commuters do know that there's going to be this downshift in service as Amtrak adjusts and switches from the old Portal North Bridge to the new one. But what's actually happening there that creates that cut in service?
Yeah, look, this is actually a good news story when the project is done.
Short-term pain.
Short-term pain for long-term
benefit.
That's right. So starting this weekend, for the next 4 weekends, Amtrak is literally going to take one of the tracks on the existing Portal Bridge and move it to the new bridge. So at the end of the 4 weeks, we will have, for the first time in 100 years, a brand new bridge that is reliable and customers can get from point A to point B in a safe and efficient manner. That is not the case today. One of the reasons why we have challenges on the Northeast Corridor is because the Portal Bridge often doesn't work, it gets stuck. That leads to multiple delays and cancellations. This is part of the path for us to improve service and to modernize the infrastructure.
And you think that'll happen quickly? People will see that difference?
4 weeks.
Yeah. You were once the CEO of the Gateway Development Commission. I really think you're just trying to get all the blocks on the bingo card for transit.
I don't know whether my wife feels that way, but yeah.
Let's ask her. What are your thoughts about the lawsuit that the GDC brought against the Trump administration over the Gateway funding freeze?
I actually think the governor's perspective on this is the right one. her view is it is the single most important project in the country. There are thousands of men and women who are working on the job, were working on the job till last Friday. And this isn't a bridge to nowhere or a tunnel to nowhere. It connects the two most important cities and regions in the country. None of us, nobody that I've heard of has said this project is not the right project. So whatever the geopolitical issues that are at stake is a separate matter that I'm not sure I'm capable or of understanding or commenting on. But I think the perspective the governor brings to this table is it's an important project. People are working on it. We need to get back to building the tunnels.
Let me ask you this. The GDC says that they exhausted all financial options, brought suit right at the end. Do you think they should have brought the lawsuit sooner, before they ran out of money?
I think the CEO has said it right. They have tried to cooperate to the greatest extent possible with the Trump administration to make sure they comply with all the mandates that they have laid out from last fall till now. I think this was the final moment in which the GDC was pushed to make the decision. I think they made the right decision. Ultimately, nobody wants to see this prolonged fight in the courts. I think everybody wants to resolve this for the right reasons. Again, nobody has ever said the project is not the right project. And I think we can never forget it. We talk about delays, and I think you started the conversation in the right place. Imagine if the tunnels that currently exist don't work. You cannot get people from where they are to New York, period.
That's what I was going to ask you. As someone who understands transit between New York and New Jersey better than anyone else, I might say, what are the vulnerabilities that exist if this does not move forward? Look,
it is catastrophic. We fought 30 years from the time the tunnels were talked about first time till the time that I worked with the former governors and the presidents and our elected leaders, including the current Governor Sherrill, to make sure we get the funding for the project. And we did it because the time was right, and this is the last chance, I believe, for a project like this to happen. If it does not happen, mark my words, we will be in a situation where there will be a crisis and we will not have an answer because our roads are full, our bridges are maxed out, and we will be stuck not just as a region, but as a country, and because this particular system runs 20% of the nation's GDP. And that is catastrophic for the economy. And I think people understand it intuitively, but we just need to get past the political challenges that exist and let people like the laborers who are working so hard to build the tunnel to do their jobs.
Chris Calori, President and CEO of NJ Transit, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Governor Sherrill also signed an executive order today banning ICE from launching any civil enforcement operations from state-owned property without a judicial warrant. The order bars ICE from using state parks, roadways, and buildings as staging areas, processing locations, and operating bases. These actions come as lawmakers in Trenton are once again seeking to pass two bills that advocates say will keep immigrants here safe, but that Governor Murphy rejected as he was leaving office. Their future under a new administration is uncertain. Raymond Santana has more as part of our Under the Dome series.
Do you have a warrant?
We don't need a warrant, bro. Stop getting that in your head.
Across New Jersey, viral videos show ICE enforcement activity ramping up and becoming more visible.
What problem are we going to have? You're harassing my household without a warrant. Huh? You don't have a warrant, honey. I'm a U.S. citizen. I know my rights.
That's why civil rights groups are urging the state to move quickly to strengthen immigrant protections they say are urgently needed.
Last year, between January and October, there were 6,000 ICE arrests in New Jersey. And at the same time, we've seen immigration detention capacity in our state more than quadruple. And we know that's only going to increase because ICE is considering converting a warehouse in Roxbury, New Jersey, to an immigration detention center. And there's also long been talks of using Fort Dix, a military base in New Jersey, as an immigration detention center too.
And now with a new legislature and a new governor, advocates are pressing to revive two bills they fought for during last year's lame duck session.
The New Jersey communities are demanding real enforceable protections now. Advocates, faith leaders, and impacted families are coming together to call for swift passage of strong immigrant trust protections that guarantee due process and limit harmful entanglement between local systems and federal immigration enforcement.
There's nothing I can do to help as far as arrest and detainment or detention, but maybe there are other things I can do as far as legislating sensitive places. And now we're really pushing the new governor, Mikey Sherrill, to push the Privacy Act, as well as the codification of the AG's directive.
The Assembly Public Safety and Preparedness Committee is set to consider 2 immigration bills Thursday that were previously pocket vetoed by former Governor Phil Murphy. One would codify the Immigrant Trust Directive, limiting cooperation between local law enforcement and federal immigration authorities, while carving out exceptions for serious criminal cases and final orders of removal signed by a judge. The other, known as the Privacy Protection Act, would restrict how state and local agencies collect and share personal information, including immigration status. Assemblywoman Ellen Park, the bill's sponsor, says the state must act.
What's happening on a daily basis is just escalating and getting worse. Nothing's getting better. And I think across the board, everybody can agree with that. And that, we need to do something as a state to protect our residents.
The same committee is also considering a bill that would ban law enforcement officers from wearing face coverings when interacting with the public following criticism that ICE agents hiding their identities limits accountability. While ICE says masks prevent their officers from being harassed, the measure cleared committee in December 2025, but never received a full floor vote.
I'm letting you right now. If you come any near me, I'm letting you know right now.
I am allowed to keep
You're not
following.
allowed to.
Governor Sherrill's office declined to comment on the pending bill, saying it does not weigh in on legislation under consideration. Her office has previously said she supports codifying the Immigration Trust Directive, but not expanding it in ways that could weaken the state's legal defense. ICE, DHS, and the National Fraternal Order of Police did not respond to requests for comment ahead of Thursday's public hearing, as advocates now demand swift action. For NJ Spotlight News, I'm Raven Santana.
Under the Dome is made possible in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
As we've reported, there's been much debate about ICE enforcement both nationally and here in New Jersey. One Republican state senator has been calling for cooler heads to prevail, and she's got some priorities of her own that she'd like to share. Senator Holly Schepisi joins us now. Senator, thanks so much for taking some time today. Great to talk to you. Let's start with some of the priorities that you wanted to see in this legislative session that we've just begun. You say affordability is important to you. What are some of your priorities?
Affordability is the one thing that we keep hearing from everybody in New Jersey. We need to ensure whether or not it's our utilities, whether or not it's allowing our middle class who are working night and day to be able to afford a home and to stay in their homes. And so one of the bills that just passed committee is one that will allow regional partnerships, will allow municipalities to work in conjunction with one another for regional planning. It's kind of an outside the box way of thinking, and enables our communities to really sit together, do economic planning, economic partnerships beyond just their municipal borders. And it's a pathway to kind of help find efficiency, cost sharing, cost savings, which in turn will help our local taxpayers.
Is this, Senator, a form of shared services that we've heard a lot about but haven't really been able to get off the ground in New Jersey?
It's a blend. It would enable shared services without the red tape of Trenton. It would allow partnerships with nonprofits, local colleges. It would allow for regional planning. If you have large developments that are abandoned, retail centers, strip malls that straddle municipal or even county borders, it would enable with the stakeholders of each of these communities to sit down and to be able to set their own pathway.
You also would like to see some tax incentives for home buyers. What would you like that to look like?
So our system is so broken. Right now, if you are kind of at the lowest end of the spectrum with income, there is plenty of availability with all of the quote unquote affordable housing mandates that have taken place. If you're wealthy enough, you can buy something. But it's everybody in between. We are taking away the ability for moderate income people to own anything. We need to, instead of building high density housing up and down this entire state, we really need to refashion what we have been doing and put together programs that incentivize developers to come in and to build moderately priced homes for sale that count against affordable housing obligations in this state. We are ensuring that people have to stay in rental housing and don't have any sort of thing to build their net worth.
I want to switch gears just a little bit because you've been vocal on Facebook about some of the recent ICE activity that we saw in Minneapolis in particular, but we've seen ramped up ICE activity here in New Jersey. Even last night, there was an encounter with an individual who ICE agents say has a criminal record. That is under investigation. But you've called for a measured response, including investigating incidents where there is a shooting by by an ICE agent. Why do you believe that's important?
I think right now, for the public at large, as leaders, we have to speak up and we need to be able to ratchet down the tone. What we have seen in Minnesota, of course, we need to investigate, and we need to investigate properly why 2 people died. And anybody who kind of says, oh, no, that concerns me. We are now putting distrust, not just for ICE agents who are not traditional law enforcement, but it's filtering into law enforcement as well. We need to ensure, and in Minnesota, could it be the policies that prohibit any sort of communication between local law enforcement and federal officials that has caused some of this? Absolutely. Could it be that ICE agents are being deployed without the appropriate amount of training? Absolutely. But we need to do better. And on both sides of the aisle, we need to kind of take a step back and say, how do we do this properly? People who are here who have committed the most horrific crimes, they should not be protected and should be able to be deported. And it's happened under every single administration, Republican and Democrat. I think right now things are so heightened because of 24-hour-a-day news cycles, because of escalation where you have leaders who are pointing fingers and calling everybody terrorists, and then on the other side saying ICE agents are the devil. We need to be able to get back to a pragmatic approach on how we handle immigration. And I don't see that happening. And so that's why, in New Jersey, I voted against the most recent ICE bills that got put forward, 2 of which Governor Murphy actually pocket vetoed because they were hastily written up. They created a bigger schism between law enforcement and the community, and they also protected the very worst of the worst that I don't think was the intent of the bill.
Let me ask you, Senator, ask you this. First, you say an investigation is needed. Quickly, do you believe that should be an independent investigation?
Unequivocally. I think right now you have just such a politically charged environment between Minnesota and the federal government that I would implore both sides to just allow, for the sake of everybody, a very unbiased, independent, impartial investigation to take place and to present to Congress what needs to be done better to ensure that we don't have future violence like that.
Let me ask you this. It's hard not to see the contrast between the situations that played out in Minnesota with an ICE officer who shot at the driver of a moving vehicle versus here in New Jersey where the officer shot at the tires of a vehicle that was approaching him. DHS says that this officer in New Jersey followed the training. So does that beg the question then, is there uniformity with the training? You mentioned that there needs to be perhaps better training. What would you like to see?
I would like to see an analysis of the training. I think, this push to meet quotas may have resulted in, well-meaning people who are signing up to be ICE agents who aren't getting the appropriate level of training. You have, police officers. You have, on average, police academies with, months and months and months of training with kind of a measured approach of where people get placed within a department based upon, time in what they've been doing. Here, you're talking about, in most instances, new agents having less than 8 weeks of training that is not necessarily tailored to these sort of very high stress, high intensity type of situations. And I think we really do need to look at that.
But that's all the time we have. Senator Holly Schepisi, I want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Joanna Gaggis for the entire team here at NJ Spotlight News. Thanks for being with us, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.
New Jersey Education Association, making public schools great for every child. And RWJ Barnabas Health. Let's be healthy together.
Have some water. Look at these kids. There, how are you? What do you see? I see myself. I became an ESL teacher to give my students what I wanted when I came to this country. The opportunity to learn, to dream, to achieve, a chance to belong and to be an American. My name is Julia Toriani Crompton, and I'm proud to be an NJEA member.